Today I'm going to talk to you about how we overcomplicated the install of these Peterson Tegl cover bricks. They're about 13 pounds a piece and there's over 2,800 of them on the house behind me. I'm Nick Schiffer. I'm a custom home builder here in Boston. This is our 45 White Oak single family development project. I want to walk you through all the details and how we installed it, plus some of the design details that make this install unique and why we did it. So let's start by the actual tiles themselves. They are a clay brick and they are C-shaped. That C shape actually allows them to be hung on our rain screen system. They are handmade, so if you look down this, you can actually see it's actually a bit twisted, which gives you the undulation on the wall. These are not going to be installed in perfectly flat or level with one another. That's part of the beauty in them. As far as installing them, they hang on our rain screen system, and then Peterson Tegl actually installs all of these holes. You're only required to install 2 screws in them, but they give multiple, so as you cut them, you're not going back to screw them. So I want to bring it back to our WRB layer, or the waterproofing layer of this home. You have your exterior plywood. We waterproof that with a WRB, which is the Siga My Vest. And then on top of that, we actually installed an exterior insulation. That is not a detail required for this system. It's just what we chose to do on this particular home to really up the performance of the home itself. Now on top of that is where we start getting the prep work done for the Peterson cover brick. We have vertical strapping installed, and the really important part of that vertical strapping is that it's anchored back into our framing. So it takes a really patient individual to make sure that as you're installing that vertical strapping, it's screwed back into our framing, which means not just our plywood, but our studs that are inside that wall cavity, and you're going through 5 inches of insulation. Once you have all your vertical on, now this is where we start getting into the architectural intent. So you have all of your horizontal strapping, which if you look closely is beveled. And the reason it's beveled is, number one, it allows water to shed off the top of that, but more importantly, it allows that brick to clip onto the top of it. As you're going up, you'll notice on all of the horizontal lines in this home, everything lines up with another horizontal plane, meaning as you follow a line, it never gets notched around a window opening, it never gets notched around the decking, or even a door opening. Everything is laid out perfectly so you have one continuous horizontal line around the entire home. Even when you get up to the 2nd floor, you'll see that the bottom of our windowsills, which are all stainless steel, line perfectly up with the bottom of our coursing. So number one, we're doing that in the design. So Vincent and his team at Of Possible have mapped all of this layout very specifically to the exposure on these shingles. And then when we're in the field, we're really triple checking that using what we call a story pole, essentially measuring the entire facade and making sure that all of those courses lay out exactly where we need them to. So this material isn't just installed on the wall, but it's also installed on the roof, and that's throughout the entire home. So you have one uniform material on the entire exterior of this home. And I said that we overcomplicated this, and I mean that in the most endearing way, in the sense that all of our outside corners are actually mitered, and they're mitered into a machine finish stainless steel fin. And we actually fabricated these fins with a stainless steel sheet metal. So this fin actually protrudes out and then goes back and ties into our vertical pressure treated strapping. And that allows for the horizontals to land on top of it and allowing all the shingles to die into it. But this cut right here is actually a compound miter. And the reason that being is that these are not perfectly vertical. So not only are you cutting your 45, but you're also cutting the compound miter to allow this to lean back and be shingled. So these are installed like a shingle formation. So this one tucks into the next one, and this one covers the fasteners on that. So this right here, in terms of our sheet metal, we actually worked with our fabricator, and we looked for what we call a machine finish. So this is not a brushed finish or a linear brush or even a random orbit brush. This is directly the way it's rolled out. But over time, this will dull out and be a very long-lasting and enduring material. Pairs well with the Peterson cover brick. Ultimately, the brick hangs on that horizontal and has 2 screws, and there's nothing more that needs to be done. There's no mortar and there's no adhesives. It hangs and it sheds water just like a shingle. A question that comes up a lot, there are these gaps in between the shingles, and yes, driving rain can and absolutely will make its way behind the shingle, especially on the roof where you actually have rain coming down and landing directly on top of it. And behind that is our Rockwool Comfort Bat. Rockwool Comfort Bat is a semi-rigid insulation. It's also hydrophobic. It can be used as a drainage layer. It is a non-issue in terms of water making its way behind there and then draining down and out. You also have a 3-inch air cavity behind all these shingles to allow for that air to circulate and dry out. Now, insects, sure, I'm sure a small insect can crawl his way in there and get in there. They're not gonna have much to survive on. That, you know, rock wool is not something that they enjoy. Critters and things like that, we have a screen at the bottom as well as the top, so critters cannot get behind this. And at the door locations, we chose to run the Thermery product. So this is a thermally modified spruce made by Thermery. That is what we're using for our decking, but we're also using it at our lift slide locations because you do have this flush transition, which ultimately is your step. And we wanted something that was going to be substantial enough to step on because it is essentially a deck. And we can also replace that over time rather than having it be something like a stainless steel that ultimately, if it gets dinged, it's a little bit more difficult to replace. So you see that at all the lower levels, you have this one consistent material all the way underneath all of these spaces. Again, paying really close attention to the fact that you have one course below, but your second course lands directly aligned with the top of the deck. And you'll see that everywhere. Now, one of the questions that comes up is, aren't you supposed to keep your siding, everything off the ground about, 8 inches by code? If it was wood, that would be the case. But here, we've actually extended that down and allowed this to really just sit directly 1 inch off of the ground and give it really this grounding aesthetic to it. And of course here, this is very close to the ground. Everything below it is protected, and these, will likely be replaced probably 10, 15 years from now, maybe even longer, due to the nature of that Thermery product. Now, as I step back, you have your fins going up the doors, but you have your second floor punched openings. And this is a different material. We actually have a fabricated stainless steel windowsill, and that windowsill on the outside is attached back to our windows and is pitched out. And that sill has a thick edge, and that bottom edge lines up with the course of the shingle at the very top. You'll actually see we have a piece of stainless steel, essentially head trim, and that is screwed into the framing above and has a small drip edge on it. So we always want to think about water management, what happens on the face of it, very simple, it drains down, what happens behind it, thinking about areas that it might get trapped and how we're dealing with that water. So things like the head, the head trim above the windows, we want to make sure that if and when it does see water, it gets out rather than trapping it. Now, if we step back a little bit further, you actually see the detail at our gutter line. That is a stainless steel cap, and we're actually working with Dura Gutter for all of the gutters on this home. And the reason we're using them, it's an extruded aluminum product. It's very, very rigid, and we wanted something, knowing where it was going to be installed, that was going to just really be a robust product. And the Dura Gutter has always been kind of our go-to when it comes to using something a lot more robust, especially in a built-in condition. So that gutter sits behind our shingle layer or our brick layer, but in the same level of our exterior insulation. Now, what that means is that we have these rain leaders or downspouts that drop down in our exterior insulation layer. It never introduces itself inside the home. It stays outside of the envelope. Yes, we're reducing the insulation value in that very location of that 3-inch downspout, but when you look at the whole envelope as a whole, it's a very small percentage. That stainless steel cap right there actually clips from the screw level of our top course back into our gutter level, creating a nice cap for any ice or snow or even just water draining off that roof, hitting that stainless steel cap and getting back into the gutter or out. Now, beyond the gutter itself, we actually have this black metal detail. And what was designed is having the shingle layer come down and really stop in a location that allowed for not only water to drop and get into the gutter, but also just not feel as though it's overhanging. You have this sense of no overhangs on the home, which traditionally can be very complicated in terms of not only building, but also just from an endurance perspective. But in this case, we're managing the water in a way that is against robust materials, especially the stainless steel. The roof actually is a hip roof, and I call it a bastard hip roof because there's different pitches on every angle. So when you look at this section here, essentially these shingles are being cut on one compound miter, and then the other side, because the pitch changes, is on a completely different compound miter. Every angle of the hip roof really had to be considered as its own thing to make sure that we were hitting that detail exactly the way it needed to fit up against that fin. And again, you can see how that fin runs up the corner and then all the way up to the roof. Now, just a reminder, if you haven't seen it in one of our previous videos, but that entire upper section of the roof is a parapet, drops down, and we have a flat roof section up there. And that's really designed to help house the roof access, the skylight penetrations like the chimney and the plumbing penetrations, and prep for future solar. The nice part is if you do want to put solar up there, you'll actually never see it. When we think about the choice of the material, it really is a product that will last hundreds of years. There's no masonry mortar. There's nothing that has to be done to it. It is a through color, meaning that this isn't something that is applied to a brick. This is the true color of the masonry product. Probably some color or discoloration, or if you want to call it that, you know, in the beating sun for years to come. But ultimately, you know, this is the color, and it doesn't require really any maintenance at all. You might have maybe a side that doesn't see as much sun that you might have to clean every once in a while, but really it's a product that can and very likely will last hundreds of years. When we were discussing how we were going to deal with things like penetrations, and we didn't want to interrupt it with the traditional sense of like these bubble covers for outlets or even hose spigots. So we actually worked with Aquor for all of our hose bibs. And here's a great example of how this looks. So I'm going to actually pull that off, because why not? Do a little ASMR. Someone's going to tell me I peeled that off wrong. So we work with Aquor, and the main reason is that they're just a lot cleaner looking, especially on the aesthetic. And these flip up here, and you have your quick connect, and they're completely frost free. They're also stainless steel. So we worked with them and ultimately built these stainless steel boxes. Now, this right here, you know, it took maybe half hour, 45 minutes to sketch up a design. We got it to our sheet metal fabricator, and he made a half a dozen of these for the project to make sure that these were installed. Number one, they have to be installed vertically in order for them to drain properly in a frost-free application, but also in a way that's able to be used in a friendly way. When we think about how we're exiting the building with things like the ERV exhaust, or we're thinking about things like the line sets, you can see we're taking that same approach. This is what I consider the business end of the house. So we have our ERV intake and exhaust here. And again, we're just fabricating these up with our sheet metal sub. These are all stainless steel. They're just sitting here because we have our trade coming back to install our actual louver. This gives you actually an up close look of our windowsill here. Because we do have a punched window down on the first floor. You can see what that looks like and how it interacts. The detail I actually kind of skipped over was the returns back into the windows. So we have our mitered corner here, and then we have this L bead essentially that is bent to allow us to capture the backside of the shingle. But all of the windows and doors, we actually returned the shingle into it. Now traditionally, again, going back to what is what I would consider to be a more simple install, you would have you know, a piece of either steel or timber that comes out and captures the shingle, which would be a lot easier, frankly, if we just had something that stuck out to this level and then we had a plumb cut for that shingle. It would actually speed up that install process because we're not dealing with all these compound miters. And that's really what I mean by overcomplicating. I don't think it's a bad thing that we overcomplicated, but there's a lot easier ways to do it, and that would have been one of them. However, when you're inside the home and you're looking out and you're getting this sneak peek of these returns, it's one of my favorite details, especially from the inside. Now we have two heat pumps. You can see how we're detailing our line sets. Same thing, we have these recessed boxes here. All of our line sets come out. We have these gaskets being made to go around the line set as well as the electrical. You can see our electrical meter bank has been prepped. We basically put a nice big flat panel there and then trimmed it out with stainless steel. Again, just that level of consistency and detail goes into all of the considerations through the entire exterior of this home. And even here where we have prepped and ready for sprinkler system for the irrigation on the home. And as we come around front, there's one more detail I want to kind of highlight and show how we're kind of bringing this into the rest of the home. So here is our entryway, and you see a lot of materials coming together. We have the thermary decking, we have our beautiful Orca brick, and this is actually a great view of how this this 45 fin comes back, ties back to, you know, this is our exterior insulation layer, which is just blocked on the end here. And then we have that L bead. So this right here is going to get infilled with our returns. And then this wall actually gets the thermary tongue and groove product, and this will sit like that all the way across, and the same thing on that side. But there's one more area that we actually utilize the cover brick, and that is on the inside, just beyond this glass wall, which sits 25 feet above the dining space, and that is our skylight. So we put this amazing 9-foot by 9-foot skylight in the roof, and then we flared down that opening to the entire second floor ceiling of the dining space. And that is probably one of the most dramatic use cases of the Petersen cover brick on this project, and really is that moment that when you get inside this home reminds you of the beauty of the outside.